It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay. Well, a lot of dead air there. Okay, well, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting by emailing me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Be sure and check out our Patreon, Opperman Report Patreon. What we're doing now is all the new shows that go up, when I record them, we're putting them up on Patreon first, and then they'll go up on the podcast about 30 days later, which is what I'm playing tonight, a couple of old shows from Patreon, good stuff, but they haven't aired yet on the podcast. They've aired on AM/FM radio with commercials, but not yet as a Friday night podcast. Just went up 3 hours ago. Opperman Extra. Ed Opperman guests on Matt Carnatan Unleashed. Matt Carnatan hosts a show Monday to Friday in New Hampshire, WMNH Radio, and he had me on there for an hour talking about Stormy Daniels and the Hunter Biden laptop, which is always so confusing. With all the means, can't quite figure out all the crimes Hunter Biden's committing there. A lot of good stuff. Susan Sparks Burns, They Have No Voice. She's an advocate for inmates in Georgia. I actually had her come on to two parts. We did 2 hours with her this week, but there's 1 hour with her in the Patreon. Just incredible what goes on in these prisons, you know, and I even learned some new things that goes on in the Georgia prisons that isn't all that common, with prostituting the correction officers, man. I hadn't heard that one before, man. I heard of the men correction officers, you know, having sex with the women, raping the women, and consensual sex between the inmates and the female officers, but not female officers acting as prostitutes and actually being recruited by gangs to become correctional officers so that they could be prostituted and trafficked inside the prisons. It's just incredible stuff that goes on in these prisons. And what people need to understand, you say, they had these correction officers, they're abusing the prisoners, they're murdering the prisoners, they're mistreating them, they're raping them. But they deserve it. What don't you understand about illegal? These are criminals. They're in prison. They're prisoners. They should be treated inhumanely. They should be punished. But about 50% of these correction officers go on to become police officers in the street, and they're going to be the ones who are pulling over your daughter and your wife, and searching them and handcuffing them and mauling them and beating people and shooting people. So this is why we want to nip it in the bud, you know. We want to kind of weed these people out from being amongst us. What else is going on? Oh, speaking of Kent McGowan, a victim of the system, yeah. He was a Texas police officer who was executing an arrest warrant at this home where he shot this woman dead, and then he got convicted. Did like 20 years in prison, man, for this. When you read these, there's a book about the story, and you read the articles. It says he was stalking her, and that he was picking on her son and targeting them because he was turned down by these people. He denies all that. He says he never had any kind of relationship with this woman, but she was having several affairs with other officers in that precinct and the sheriff's department and the cops and stuff down there, and that's why he was set up to take the fall for all this. The guy's a pretty convincing guy. A little annoying, I got to be honest with you, but convincing. And there's a similar case. I talked about it here with this fellow. This black guy was picked up because he was a BLM activist and had a lot of petty charges, had some mental illness, and a lot of shoplifting charges and stuff like that, public intoxication, trespassing, those kind of things. And when this cop was shot in this car, this woman was with him, and it turned out he was married, she was dating him, she was dating the cops who investigated. The sheriff knew about all the shenanigans going on with this woman dating all the cops in the precinct there. And he says, and this is BLM, when they knew it wasn't this BLM thing. But the sheriff did a press conference saying that police are targets of BLM. Did a whole show about it. Jen Coffey came on the show. She's an advocate for an artist and an activist and advocate for pain treatments without opioids. And we talked about ketamine and also to some other miracle drug that she was involved with there, too. She's a 2-time cancer survivor. So we got her there. Let's go down a little further. Megan Walsh, updates on the Adam Walsh case and her campaign against child trafficking. Then we have NT Lawyer talking mostly about Kanye West. But, with me and NT Lawyer, we get into a lot of stuff. That was a while ago, man. And then Tiller Russell about Waco, the American tragedy. Now, tonight, I'll be playing for you. And I hate to do it this way because I know we send these Friday night shows. They used to be exclusive to the Spreaker audience. But now we send them out to the stations, too. So if you're listening on the radio, it won't be tonight. It'll be this week in the future. Or maybe you heard it already. But Tiller Russell, Waco, American Tragedy, that's a film, a documentary series right now playing on Netflix. You can watch it right now. But you can watch it while you're listening to the interview or before or after the interview. I think it's very well done. Tiller Russell is involved with a lot of documentaries that I'm a huge fan of. Operation Odessa and also the 7-5 about Michael Dowd. So, all that stuff. Then we have Scorpions Dance, the President, the Spy Master, and Watergate. The guest with that is Mr. Jefferson Morley. And we talk about a lot of stuff as far as all that goes. We cover a lot of material there. I had a bunch of guests flake on me this week. I was going to do a show about Malcolm X and CIA interference when he was traveling overseas. This woman about sex trafficking, a survivor of sex trafficking, she flaked on me 3 times, 3 hours wasted, plus a couple hours talking to her on the phone, just trying to get her on the show. Really sucks. And then this other situation, this candidate running for office, who came to me about doing an interview. A friend of hers begged me to do this interview with this woman, and then they all started giving me this hard time. I had, they all wanted my private phone number to get a hold of me, and I had to talk to 3 different people in order to book this interview. When they're coming to me asking to do the interview, I'm not gonna, I can't spend 2 hours on a 1-hour interview, guys, or 3 hours. Now I'm gonna have you guys calling me up all the time, my private number. It's bad enough. Mike Finkel about the story about the hermit in Maine. That's a great book, man. Check that out. And he's a very good guest. He's a great guy, man, because I had a lot of problems with him scheduling and technical problems. And so he rescheduled with me. Really nice guy. And he's going to be coming on, too. I'm taping again with him about this art thief story. And then there's another story, too, I want to do with him. Don Lattin about psychedelics. We talked about his lifelong research into psychedelics and his latest book about this study with different church and religious figures like rabbis and Buddhists and monks and priests who all did these studies on LSD or some other type of psychedelics, and then to see how it would translate their different faiths. Tasha Adams, the ex-wife of Stuart Rhodes from the Oath Keepers, she's coming back. Steve Urbani about what's that? Princess Diana and the Origins of Q project. We have a spokesperson for them coming on about the whole QAnon phenomenon and all that stuff. You can find all of our archives at Spreaker.com. It's the best way to find the archives and to find this live show. There's a chat room. We play repeats every night, and you get an email notification when we put up new content. And when you see that Spreaker, when I post it on Facebook or Truth Social, which I'm a member of, or Twitter, or any of those things, and please, if you could share those, man, if you can retweet those and share those, that would be a big help to me. Okay? All right. Okay. Let's get to the notes. I got a lot of content for you guys. There's so much going on. First, I got to find my notes. Oh, there it is. There we go. Oh, boy. Well, we're going to be getting into, so hang out till the end. Okay, this whole story about this Trammell Crow Jr. Now, this is the brother of this Crow fellow who's been funneling all this money to Clarence Thomas. And this Trammell Crow lives in Texas, and he's involved in a sex trafficking lawsuit. Okay, so we're going to be getting into that. That was just filed in November. And since it was filed in November, and by the way, there's like 30 defendants in this case, and these just aren't names picked at random. I'm looking at this case, guys. There's meat on these bones. This was filed in November, and since then there's been like 90 motions to dismiss by these assortment of plaintiffs that are doctors and strip club owners and property management companies, and one is a sheriff by name. Okay, so there's a lot of content here, guys. Okay, and we're going to be getting into that at the end of the show. That'll be the last thing we'll be talking about. Also, Judge Janine Pirro. I got a little kind of inside information about her whole situation when she tried to wiretap her husband and tried to hire Bernie Kerik. And Rudy Giuliani was involved in that too. Again, that was around 2006. And her name came up to me this week because, as you know, she got fired from Fox News because they lost that big, giant $800 million lawsuit against the Dominion Software Company. So her name came up along with Dan Bongino, who was his former Secret Service agent. By the way, when you hear Dan Bongino talk about, when I was an agent, a federal agent, I investigated this and I investigated that, and we did this. This is a procedure. This guy was a driving instructor for the Secret Service. Okay, that was his job at the U.S. Secret Service. He taught agents defensive driving course. I've actually taken that course from a Secret Service agent. Okay, it wasn't. I can't say I took the course, but I took some lessons from a guy who was former Secret Service who had taken that course, and he taught me some stuff, defensive driving tactics and stuff. So Dan Bongino is not some big investigator guy. I mean, the guy was a driving instructor. Okay, when you drive along, you see that student driver, that was Dan Bongino, but he just had a Secret Service agent in the car. So let's not give this guy too much credit there, okay? We're going to be talking about the Kent Sturman suicide here in Florida. Who was this big donor for Ron DeSantis. And he also, the reason why Ron DeSantis was able to run in office here is because he put himself down as a roommate or a tenant for Kent Sturman. And a few months back, Mr. Kent Sturman is a big donor here. I think I talked about it here on the show, and how he had this ID card to get into the sheriff's department headquarters here in Florida, the state police. And he would go into the state police offices. We had a key card where he could punch himself in and go total access. This guy's a civilian. This guy's a nobody. There's no access to this thing. The claim later on, the same sheriff department, by the way, that's investigating this suicide, is the one who he had the access to go in and do whatever he wanted. He could run things on. Who knows what he was doing in there? He said at one point they were claiming he was using the range, but how many times a day do you go to a firing range? Even when there was that was my main hobby. The most we would do was like 6 nights a week, man. We would go fight, and we just one time a day. You wouldn't go back 2 or 3 times a day. Just ridiculous. And we were obsessed with going to the range. Thousands of rounds. It's expensive. So anyway, the story came out this week that the reason for his suicide was that he was speaking. He had an inappropriate relationship with a 16-year-old girl, and he was offering her Taylor Swift tickets to send him pictures of her breasts. And there was a big investigation into this, and he had offered her father. It was something in the area of several $100,000, and the father turned it down and made a complaint with the sheriff's department, and the investigation was open, and then he killed himself. That's Kent Sturman. And now there's a little bit of talk about this in the news, but very little of what they're talking about is this guy was a roommate of Ron DeSantis. Okay, so here we have Ron DeSantis connected with another underage sex crimes case going on here in Florida, because we know he's connected to that Matt Gaetz and Joel Greenberg. 17 minutes already. Oh no, Mr. Bill, what are we going to do? We're running out of time. All right, God, one thing I wanted to talk about today too is, let's get into Ali Alexander, okay, because he has a similar problem as Mr. Kent Sturman, and also too with these other. I got to send it first. Okay, let me do that. Okay. Now I can click on it. Ali Alexander. Now, do you know who Ali Alexander is?